he's, running past. He was tied with Thurman before last night, and Willis McGahee, by the way. He passes 3 others as well, including Ricky Williams. Just, I think of it this way. You hear these names and ask yourself if it makes sense. Does it make sense that Josh Allen has more rushing touchdowns than Ricky Williams ever did? And now he's tied with Todd Gurley. Does that make sense? That Allen and Todd Gurley have the same number of rushing touchdowns, 67. Next up is Eddie George, Maurice Jones-Drew, and Thomas Jones sitting there at 68. Come on.
He's coming for them all.
Come on. Eric Wood with us on the Wester Hotline. How about you with that, Eric? Does it kind of blow your mind to think that Allen is passing these all-time great running backs in this category? Come on.
Yeah, it is kind of mind-boggling, especially when a lot of them played. It wasn't as many quarterbacks taking it into the end zone with their legs as there are now. So, yeah, it's I guess more surprising from that aspect of it.
Todd Gurley didn't get vultured too many times by Jared Goff or Nick Foles, Case Keenum. I guess you're right about that. So, yes.
Right.
Well, last night, Eric, were you thinking comeback as the fourth quarter was playing out? You were in the stadium. You're seeing the fans leave. That had to be a sight to see for this team in recent years. It's very rare, of course. Did you, as a former player too, because I wonder your perspective on how the players have to be thinking where the game might, to us, feel like it's over, but really isn't.
Yeah, I guess at this point I can have a different feeling than when I was playing. When you're playing, it's, hey, we got another series. Who knows what's going to happen? As I was sitting there watching from the booth last night, I was thinking this game's over. We're not going to be able to get multiple stops here. We failed on these 2-point conversion attempts that we really needed. Now it's probably out of reach. But in the NFL, anything can happen. And you get that fumble, which I think was the biggest play of all of it. You get that fumble by Ed Oliver. And then all of a sudden now you're right back in it and you get a stop. And it's easy to say, hey, let's run out the clock. And, the Bills struggled against the run so bad against the Ravens. But when they're going to run the football in every play and there's not the element of the play action or not likely the element of the play action, then it becomes easier to stop. And John Harbaugh's got a crazy track record of blowing these 2-score leads. And, maybe he gets too much of the blame and the players or coordinators deserve more of it, but ultimately it falls on the head coach because he's been the common denominator. And so all that being said, me and Chris were going through, it's been, 13 straight games since the Bills have lost at home. They haven't given up 40 points since 2022. And we're kind of going through all that. And then here come the Bills roaring back and shocked us all.
I know from following you on social media, Eric, that you were impressed with Ed Oliver, and good for him that he got that big play that they needed. They really, any team is going to tell you they want turnovers, and there's even situations in games where you need one, and that sure as heck felt like one with their inability to really stop them consistently anyways. Like, the turnover was exactly what you needed in a short field, and Oliver makes that play and kind of, I don't want to use the phrasing that puts a cherry on top, but he had a very strong game. Even though they got gashed, he made good plays all night, I thought.
He did. He had multiple tackles for loss. He had a hit on the quarterback. He had a sack earlier in the game. I believe he had 6 solo tackles, which is really strong for a defensive tackle. A lot of times those guys are eating up blockers at the line of scrimmage, and they might get credit in the film room for one of the linebackers making a play because they ate up a couple guys. Well, you get 6 solo tackles as a defensive tackle. That's pretty impressive. And then he obviously gets the forced fumble. And I thought in watching back some clips and some of the film today, it just seemed like he was playing at a different intensity than most others on the field defensively, and then kind of different than I've seen him play at times. His kind of MO is, he shows up in, big time, primetime games during the season, hasn't done a whole lot in the playoffs, and I'm hoping he can bring some consistency to this season, because when he plays like he does last night, he's one of the better defensive tackles in the league. And, we'll see different tests this week, different tests each and every week. The weakness of this Ravens offense is likely their 2 guards. And so we'll see if he can put it together this week. But, you also have to take advantage of those mismatches, and not many others did. So give Ed Oliver credit to playing a heck of a game last night.
Eric, going back to some of the moments here late in the game last night, you mentioned the Henry fumble. That's preceded by a Lamar Jackson 13-yard run. It's a sticking point with me as being such a fan of his in these losses, and some have been in the playoffs. He just isn't like, wouldn't their best, if it's not Derrick Henry off tackle, wouldn't Lamar Jackson or just the threat of a Jackson run be the thing you'd be afraid of? And again, in that series where they end up punting, nothing. Henry run and then a jet sweep with Flowers. Milano swallows him up. And then the pass to Hopkins, and Oliver wrecks Jackson on that play. And people were pointing out, I'm like, you got to go for it here. Maybe they just weren't able to do that because of how he felt or something. I mean, if you ask me, taking the time out if I have to, whatever. Like, just punting is just the worst option, I think. But there's that too. And Eric, the Bills, I mean, compared to the Ravens, and we've seen it when they've been on the same field, they don't make the mistakes the Ravens do, whether that's mental or something else. And they have all their timeouts to be able to use all three on that series, never, or rarely at least, wasting them on, they only have 10 guys on the field or some random thing that can happen in a game. But very often, maybe I would say most of the time, when the Bills need their timeouts, they have them. Well, I mean, that wasn't so amazing of a commentary by me to leave Eric speechless. But, I mean, I've done better.
Well, they really were buttoned up yesterday. And, not that it's the hardest thing to do, but and we will know. I don't know. Do you know? Maybe you do. While we're waiting to get Eric back, if Coleman was asked what he would have done if Alexander didn't clip his foot there on that last reception that preceded the field goal, because they kneeled after that play. And
would you have gone in?
Yeah, if he eludes that tackle, there's no one on the screen. Like, he's waltzing into the end zone there if he wants to. I wonder if he would have known to sit down there, because obviously you score there, that's nice, you've got the lead, and I don't even think, it's a 2-point game at that point?
Yeah.
So a field goal isn't even going to beat you, but still, you're going to give them the ball back, and you wanted to avoid that. I just wonder if Coleman would have known enough to get down there if he had eluded that tackle.
Eric, I don't know what you heard or missed, but I was talking about the Bills having their timeouts. Go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry, I heard all that, and somehow I got cut off where you guys couldn't hear me. Anyways, yeah, I mean, when you have – my point that I was trying to make was when you – have sustained success that the Bills have had, you likely do a lot of the little things like that, right? You don't waste your timeouts. You get the play calls in on time so that you don't have to waste the timeout in those incidents. And, are the Bills perfect in that regard? No. But more often than not, they're so worried about end of half, end of game situations that they're going to be on their stuff to be able to avoid wasting timeouts in those situations. And so, yeah, definitely played a factor there at the end. And then, getting later in the game, you make Baltimore by Keon Coleman getting tripped up, which I hope he would have gone down at the one.
Sorry, I was just mentioning.
I was getting really close to the Micah Hyde running back the onside kick, get down, the game's over, against the Dolphins a few years ago that I did on the broadcast, and everyone roasted me on social media for being a party pooper, but it's just what you should do in that situation and ice the game. But regardless, Keon Coleman goes down that instance, and you're able to make Baltimore burn all their timeouts and not let them have a shot to win the game with a touchdown.
Eric Wood on the Wester Hotline. Bills over the Ravens 41-40. Scoregami. First ever game in NFL history by that score. I mean, it doesn't really even need to be said, I guess, but the magnitude of that win in the standings potentially. These two teams, Kansas City loses, Cincinnati 7 yards in the second half against the Browns. Denver didn't look good. Houston didn't look good. Miami, and for that matter, New England looked bad too. I mean, it's too early to assume too much, I guess, but their next 8 opponents are all 0-1, Eric, and Dolphins and the Saints coming up here after this Jet game. I don't know. This game could end up being just massive in the end. I mean, even if they did have a harder schedule, that could still be true.
No, I agree. Yeah, this is going to be a crucial win, and likely Kansas City towards the end, and potentially however this all shakes out. But when you're talking about home field advantage in the playoffs, that's a massive game, and I mean it's just we all have this warm and fuzzy feeling today, and it's amazing how bleak it was with less than 5 minutes to go in the game.
Something that has stood out already just early on in our show anyway, talking about this game, Eric, is how electric, how excellent the Bills' downfield passing game was once they got to it when they really needed to, because they were as behind as they were. Did you think that early on it was a little too much of the behind the line of scrimmage, at the line of scrimmage, that kind of that quick hitting stuff that we saw some of last year? I wonder if there weren't opportunities to do more of what they did in the fourth quarter earlier in the game, and if they learned maybe like exactly who Josh Palmer is, and maybe Coleman emerging in the fourth quarter like he did. I read he was targeted 10 times in the fourth quarter, only one prior to that, but still ends up being a big stat line for him in this game. I'm just wondering if the Bills maybe need to get to that sort of offense maybe a little sooner in games.
I think so, and I'm not sure if Josh got the checkdowns or if he checked to maybe some of those wide receiver screens because they thought they saw blitz, and then you get it out on the perimeter easily, and based on the blitz, those wide receiver screens in theory should work better as everyone's up the field. I'm not sure on that, whether it's play call, decision-making by Josh, or whatever it may be, coverage dictating it. Regardless, on the first drive of the game, he takes a shot down the field to Shakir, sails it just over him, and almost gets intercepted. He has the strike for 15 yards for the touchdown to Dalton Kincaid, and then I believe he missed Palmer down the field on one. But those were really the only times that in the first half we really pressed the ball down the field, especially something that wasn't off script. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I do think they need to get to that, and that's something they talked about heading into the offseason. Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott at their press conferences at the end of the season was developing a more consistent downfield passing game, and we got to it. It was just late in the game. And so, like I said, I don't want to point fingers and say, Joe Brady dialed up 0 shots in this one. A lot of times when you go back and look at the film, which I haven't had the opportunity to yet, I haven't gotten the chance. I haven't been exposed to it yet, right. The full all 22 copy. But a lot of times, you have a 50, whatever it may be, Josh is trying to take what they give him. And, late in the game when you have to make those plays, Josh looks at it and says, well, I think I can make that throw. And he does.
Come on, Eric. It's like the next day. You haven't watched the All-22 yet. You had to fly home, probably have other commitments. You haven't gotten around to that yet?
I haven't got to it yet. And this year, and normally I do watch some film before this because we do the chopping wood for the Sean McDermott show. But this year it's going to be more just dialogue between me and Steve and not breaking down the film. So,
okay.
Yeah. So all that being said,
well, an example.
I don't want to say I'm unprepared because I watched every bit of the game with almost the best all 22s you could possibly get in our our broadcast booth, which sits right midfield, halfway up. It's my favorite. Even if I wasn't in the booth, that's where I'd want to watch the game from. And but just real quick, circling back to that, I felt like early on it just seemed like they were daring the Bills to run the football or throw those short passes by playing a little bit off and saying, we're going to keep everything in front of us and rally to the football.
So what do you make of the defense last night? Yes, it's the Ravens. We've seen Derrick Henry do that kind of damage before, and Lamar Jackson. But, Eric, it came especially easy to Baltimore. I mean, their drives were so quick, short. I mean, just huge chunks on their running game. Was there a tactical change made that you'd want to point out, or just what you might have been thinking and saying, watching them struggle so badly to stop the Ravens? And, I mean, Zay Flowers ends up with the wide receiver 1 of the week in fantasy, too. He had a big night.
Yeah, it seemed like a combination of a lot of things. At times, it looked like their offensive line was getting the better of our defensive line. At times, it looked like either the second or third level of the defense wasn't fitting the holes properly, that just let Derrick Henry just hit these big holes with a full head of steam, and at that point, just look out. The book on Derrick Henry is get him to stutter his feet in the backfield, and it's when you're 250 pounds, it's hard to stop and start that quickly. Well, we didn't make him stutter in the backfield very often, and so it's a combination of all three levels. I've seen a bunch of stuff on social media, people point out bad angles by the safeties, and look, they didn't get a lot of time during training camp. They didn't get a lot of reps. They barely played in the preseason games, and so there might be some growing pains. You start a late-round draft pick rookie at corner who seemed to be fine last night. No huge blunders by any means, but inexperience, and you just have a lot of that. And then I will say this. Early on in the game, the Ravens have a long drive. They get a sack. They hold them to a field goal. Bills go 3-and-out back-to-back drives. That's really tough on a defense. I mean, especially a defense like the Ravens. So then the second series of the game, the Bills start with their backup defensive line in because their starters were just in there. And I don't know, it's kind of like that ripple effect that we talk about often. It's like the offense keeps going 3-and-out. And yes, you'd love to say, hey, defense, go out there and you get a 3-and-out. But when you're on the sideline, you have a full off season to game plan for a defense. They're trying to figure out what Baltimore's doing to them. Oh, everybody hurry up. Get off the bench. Here we go. We're back out there. That's a tough I'm not making excuses for them, but the complementary football that Sean McDermott often talks about wasn't quite there, and the Bills go 3-and-out back-to-back times, and the Ravens get 2 of their touchdowns off of those 3-and-outs.
Eric, how about Matt Prater? You never had the experience of being, you were a new guy when you got drafted, but you played your career here. You didn't join a new team, 3 days before the opener or anything. You never had that experience. Here's Prater, comes across the country, doesn't know how long he'll be here, but nails everything, including, that game winner. I mean, it's a guy that has obviously plenty of experience in the league, so it's not new to him, but still it's got to be quite a whirlwind to show up in a place like this with this fan base and have the opportunity to make that kick like he did.
Yeah, what an opportunity. 3 days later, you got a chance to go solidify the win in what's likely going to be one of the favorite Bills memories for the entire fan base, maybe the most memorable game of the whole season when you consider that the entire country was tuned in on Sunday Night Football. But and you could blow it all. It could all be for nothing if you don't make that field goal. I tried to look it up, and I think I got the correct stat that he had 23 game-winning field goals prior to that one. So not an unfamiliar situation for him. And I'd assume if he's 41 years old and teams are signing him, he's probably a pretty good dude in the locker room and obviously good at his job to stick around that long. But, yeah, I'm impressed that he was able to, 1, perform the way he did, 2, impressed by the Bills that they didn't say, this guy was a 6th-round rookie. He just got cut by this team. He's got super high potential. Well, this team doesn't need potential right now. We need somebody that can come in and look like he's been there before, and that's exactly what he did last night.
Which is, brings the Ravens to mind with their kicker, Tyler Loop, who made 4 out of 5, but missed an extra point. Or was it 4 out of 5 extra points? Maybe it was. I mean, they lost by 1. Well, we won't talk again until this game on Sunday. The Jets lost to Pittsburgh, but had almost a shockingly good day offensively. This was the game with the lowest point total in Vegas, something around 37, and the game ends 34-32. Pittsburgh over the Jets. I'm not sure if you got to watch any of it. Maybe you did, as it was in the early afternoon. What are your thoughts on them? Justin Fields, good start. Breece Hall, all of it.
Yeah, Justin Fields, a good start. No surprise to you in your fantasy football projections.
Thank you.
But it's going to be a similar test to last week. Not quite as much talent on the field, but you have a mobile quarterback. You have pretty good running backs, and they're going to test the Bills similar to ways that Baltimore did because it's a copycat league. Now, they're not as good as Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry and that crew, but they have some talent on that side of the football. They're young. They're hungry. Aaron Glenn, their head coach, I was watching the game, and he's, getting the guys going. They seem to be playing with maybe more effort than they did at times under Saleh. So, you go on the road, division game, early in the season, especially new head coach. Obviously no one wants to start 0-2, but you get more confidence when you got a new coach and you think, okay, maybe this is our year. We just played the Steelers tough. Maybe they're going to be really good. And, so we'll see. But I'd imagine the Bills are going to get a tough test this weekend because they're going to try and pound the ball out on the ground, see if the Bills can make a couple of mistakes, and hopefully the Bills can just take care of business.
How much of it all, Eric, is it a challenge for a team to let go of such a dramatic? I mean, I know how we've heard from some fans already today. I know how I'm feeling. It's so exhilarating to win a game like that. That's already being talked about as potentially. I mean, we'll see what the rest of the season looks like, but it's a game of the year candidate, and it's only week one here. It's not just your average win, to win it that way. And I just wonder if there's a valley you have to be prepared to handle emotionally.
That's a great question, and I'm not trying to cut out by saying I don't really know. We didn't have monster wins. That we had the one win against New England to get to 3-0, and we had win to get in the playoffs and all that. So being a little facetious there, but Sean McDermott's going to understand that. Yes, they're probably still on a high from last night today, and that's okay. We always say the 24-hour rule. Enjoy it or be down in the dumps for a day, and that's okay. But you got 24 hours, and then we're going to rebound, and whether good or bad, start preparations for our next opponent. And so I'm sure Sean will be on them all week, understanding that that was one game against the Ravens, and coming up you have a divisional game, which is in theory more important than the previous one. And it'll be an 0-1 team that's ticked off every time we've played these guys recently. They've gotten fights, and I just looked, and Michael Clemens is still on the roster, so we'll have to keep Deion Dawkins in check because Deion, 73 and 72, will be fighting a good amount on Sunday, I'm sure.
Eric, thanks for this. Glad to have you back this year, and we'll talk next week.
All right, sounds good. Always great talking with you.